guests, ladies and gentlemen. As political leaders of Eden, we have signed this declaration having fully realized that there is an increasing evidence which shows that climate change is occurring in the region and impacting severely on our local communities. We have furthermore realized that this calls upon us as political leaders to adopt a holistic, integrated, coordinated and collaborative response to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, have better spatial planning and development that is really sustainable for the benefit of our future and present generations. While with the signing of this declaration, we pledge to find all forms of capacity and resources to ensure that the learning outcomes of this summit will produce tangible deliverables to uphold the integrity of the natural and receiving environment, and in doing so, ensure that our social and economic dimensions are sustained and strengthened. For our valued officials on the ground, your challenges will be great. Effective rollout programs and actions to address the summits and this declaration will require your dedication, your motivation and enthusiasm. We will work towards establishing a municipal adaptation strategy for the Eden District region. Our officials will collaborate with experts to assess climate trends and future projections, to undertake a climate vulnerability assessment of our municipal area, to identify current and future sectoral and cross-sectoral vulnerabilities based on the current climate variability risk and trends, much of what we have learned from this summit. We will need to capture this information on local vulnerability maps using GIS and other tools. The climate assessment will need to include sea level rise, droughts and flood-prone areas, identifying and managing sensitive wetlands and waste to lessen the impact of disasters in our area. In addition, a full review of current development plans will need to be initiated, and in overlaying development priorities, we can develop adaptation options which will culminate in the final implementation of our municipal climate change adaptation plan. I appeal to the scientific community, to the provincial and national government to support local government in the delivery of the Eden Declaration to address climate change. This declaration is not intended to be a comprehensive guide to action on climate change, but for me it sets out 6 areas for action. And the first one is high-level commitment. Climate change is an issue that demands a high-level commitment and strong leadership. Local authority leaders, chief executives and senior managers should be at the forefront of action on climate change. We are closest to the people and therefore have the opportunity to influence the way in which our people deal with climate change. The second one is leading by example. Local authorities are ideally placed to lead by example and demonstrate to the wider community, both business and residents, what can be done to address climate change, becoming energy efficient, building green buildings, recycling, and environmentally friendly urban planning is just some of the ways that we can lessen our carbon footprints. The third one is spending wisely. Procurement is a key area in which local authorities can demonstrate leadership. By helping create markets for more sustainable products, by developing local economies and stimulating suppliers to improve performance, the power of the public hand is significant. Many local authorities need to utilize their purchasing power proactively to support sustainable development whilst revisiting the upgrading of stormwater, waste and renewable energy management plans. The fourth one, encouraging and supporting others. As well as leading by example, there is much that local authorities can do to encourage, to support and require others to address climate change. And through working in partnership with other public sector bodies, fellow parastatal bodies and non-governmental organizations, What is needed is a coordinated effort. Number 5, measuring progress. Bold targets need to be set and monitored to measure progress. Action is required, and only by setting clear goals and targets can we transform the way we do business. Above all, ladies and gentlemen, this climate change summit has again been a strong reminder that global warming and its impact has become one of the biggest global challenges that we, our children, and our grandchildren will face. We understand that it would not be economically, environmentally, or politically sustainable for the Eden District to continue to grow along a business as usual path. In other words, without a carbon constraint. Although Eden has contributed and continues to contribute a relatively small amount to the global greenhouse gas emissions that are the cause of climate change, we are far from blameless. Emissions are substantial. We have used the privilege of cheap electricity not responsibly. We have contributed to become one of the most energy inefficient countries in the world, and we are Africa's largest contributor to the greenhouse gas emissions. In our country and the rest of the world had to do anything, had to do nothing, it would be disastrous. Most significantly for us in Africa, as clearly indicated at this summit, it would most certainly lead to temperature increases that can be regarded as dangerous and destructive. However, we also know that even if we could stop all of our emissions tomorrow, we still have to bear the impacts of climate change. The droughts, the floods, the sea level rise, the dramatic plant and animal extinctions, the extreme weather events and the spreading of disease vectors. So adaptation must be a central part of our response. Climate change is a global problem that will only be addressed through committed and active global interventions. Thus, in response to the scientific realities presented at this summit, we are faced with two choices. The first one, we could simply continue on a business as usual path and hope that every other municipality does not follow the same route. Or the second one, we can actively encourage business unusual and trust that our actions, taken together with the actions of other responsible stakeholders, will provide the necessary leverage to ensure committed and active local interventions to address the challenge of climate change. The choice seems obvious, yet it would be hugely irresponsible for us to implement an ill-informed strategy that could have direct consequences for our people and economy, especially in respect to climate change mitigation and the reduction of our greenhouse gas emissions. We will collaboratively embark on this process, seeking to protect our receiving environment whilst meeting the developmental challenges of poverty alleviation and job creation. If we continue a business as usual approach, we will effectively quadruple our greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, and in the process allow our country to become an international pariah. It is clear from the presentations and the debates surrounding this summit that partial solutions to the climate challenge are pointless. Ad hoc interventions will not close the gap between where we are heading and where science requires us to be. Nor will they be efficient. We need to be ambitious and demonstrate leadership. What we need is a consolidated approach to a low-carbon economy. In aiming for the required by science option, our emissions need to peak, plateau, and decline sooner rather than later. Otherwise, it will become more painful and expensive in the future. Let me conclude with this quote from John F. Kennedy, and he said, "There are risks and costs to a program of action, but they are far less than the long-range risk and cost of comfortable inaction."